Hey everyone, Brian Beeler and Kevin O'Brien coming to you from the Storage Review Lab, and we're taking a look at yet another NAS. I feel like we just did a Synology NAS, but when I look back, we did the XS Plus, the similar one to this, a while ago.
Yeah, it looks almost identical, but it's the one with 10 gig and different.
The XS has the 10 gig.
Yes.
Yes, we have no 10 gig in this one.
And
actually, we did the replication snapshot piece with the XS Plus already, so maybe that's why I feel like we were just using it. Anyway, this is the 1621 Plus. It's a 6-bay, but the 16 means it can go to 16 bays with two of their 5-bay JBODs that can attach on the back, which gives it a lot of flexibility. There's a PCIe port on here. There's M.2 slots in here for cache.
It offers a lot of functionality, just at a lower price point without 10 gig.
Right, so it does, compared to the XS Plus, which is an Intel-based system, this guy does have just quad 1 gig. And actually, if we pull out some of these, I don't know if we'll be able to see it too well in the camera at this range, but the two M.2 ports are tucked away on the side of the device on the inside. So you can still get to them while taking out a couple of the drive bays to manipulate those.
Yes, and you'll want to have the system off while you install those.
It's not even plugged in, so yes. It's certainly off. Now, some of the Synologies have done the bays on the bottom underneath. What was it? The 720 Plus had the little doors on the bottom.
It was the model style that doesn't look like this guy. So the ones that had more plastic for the external case generally had them on the bottom.
But generally speaking, it's got quite a bit going on. We'll go over all the ports here in a minute, but I'll spin it around. Actually, let's go ahead and take a look at the ports and the setup on this guy so we can understand what's going on. So as we said, it's got an AMD Ryzen CPU inside, which is really interesting because on their performance data on the 1621 Plus, they're like, yeah, it's 100 billion times better than the prior Gen 1, which was based on Atom, right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of, the big improvements are processor, but a lot of it's just held back by what the interface is.
Yeah, well, on the NICs, but just the move from that older Atom processor onto Ryzen will give you quite a bit of uplift. 4 gig of DDR4 on board. You can expand it, but expanding can be a little expensive in a unit of this size.
Yeah, and right now the SODIMMs, if you use the Synology branded ones, they're $330 each, which is kind of steep for the 16 gig modules.
Yeah, I mean, 4 gig's going to get you by if you're just using
if you use it as a NAS.
Their base set of NAS operations, right? But as soon as you want to go to virtualization or cloud cache containers, you might need to juice the RAM a little bit. We talked about the 4 gig onboard or the 4 single gig onboard, but it does have the expansion slot, so you can slam the 10 gig in there if you want.
Yeah.
And then if we go one more, we can look at the ports and designations. Again, we keep hammering on it, but number 12 there shows those 4 RJ45 ports, no 10 gig on board, and then the number 14 there is the SATA expanders for the JBODs. If you want to add more capacity later, it looks like the same thing, just a little bit lighter with fewer parts in it.
Yes, I think it's the DX517.
Yeah,
we've had them in the past. They're pretty useful to add storage capacity, but I think for a lot of people, I'm not sure how popular it is versus just getting the number of drive bays that you need at the onset.
Yeah, although I guess there are a lot of people that'll fill this up with smaller drives, then realize they need more space, and rather than blow away the smaller drives, just slam that guy on there and they get something bigger, because it's not terribly expensive.
No.
Okay, so let's take a look at performance too then and see what we found. And remind me how we tested this.
So we're using 6 drives. We're using the WD Red 14 terabyte and then a Samsung SM863 960 gig, also in RAID 6.
So we did a hard drive set and a flash set, but we didn't do the caching in this. Okay.
And really, This platform could be a lot faster with with a single or dual port 10 gig interface.
Right, because clearly this data shows that hard drives are as fast as SSDs.
Yeah, and in this case, up until you go to the randomized workloads, you're not going to find a huge differentiation between hard drives and flash.
Okay.
But to compare this to where the DS1621 XS Plus came in at, those are on 1.1 gigabytes per second on sequential bandwidth, just because
it has the big fatter pipe, right?
Yeah, it's a 10 gig interface.
And so that's what you pay for in that model. You get the Intel CPU, but you also get the 10 gig on board, so that explains a big part of the price delta. I think that one's got a little more RAM in it too.
Yeah. So 8K sequential, good for around 54 to 56,000 IOPS or 57,000 IOPS. And this is going to be more of a, I think this is still coming up to the limits of the four 1 gig interfaces. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, because Flash only ekes it out just a little bit here.
Yeah. And then we start going into our random workloads, and this is where it's the main advantage of going to Flash. You're going to get a lot higher performance. Write workloads topped out around 43,000 IOPS on both the SMB and iSCSI flash configurations. And then when you look at iSCSI 4K random read, it topped at around just under 100,000 IOPS.
So this was interesting, the 4K data, when we start looking at multi-user, multi-tenancy type workloads, that's when you see the big benefit of Flash.
Well, yeah, I mean, any sequential workload, if applied enough, becomes a randomized workload. So if you have 16 sequential streams, any overlapping stream is going to turn into a random workload to the underlying storage.
Right, so in terms of selecting hard drives or Flash or some cache, Flash or not, the stepping point is really going to be, well, what's the workload, but then how many of those workloads are there? If it's just one family using it as a photo repository or a backup target for their Macs or whatever, you could probably get away just fine with hard drives.
You're probably not going to see huge difference with just like a couple of people, but as soon as you start adding in more simultaneous users, that's where cache or underlying flash volumes would definitely benefit.
All right, so what else we have then?
This is our AK7030 profile, so again random, and you're just going to see a huge improvements going to flash. The flash on SMB topped out at around 15,000 IOPS, and then iSCSI right around 50,000 IOPS. So a lot of headroom for randomized workloads, but you're not going to see that on hard drives, obviously.
the little wee green lines?
Yes.
So overall, a pretty good performance profile, decent value, plus you get DSM, which brings in all the packages, app support, and all those other things.
Yeah, DSM for a small business and even some medium businesses really helps out. I mean, it's fantastic for doing replication. It's easy to do backups, or if you're just a home user and want to wait to not impact iCloud storage and dump all your photos on the home NAS, you can do that and catalog them and view them easily using
use their little apps.
Yeah.
So this is the 6-bay unit, and if we're thinking about how to spend a personal budget or an IT budget, what's the big difference between this and the 5-bay unit?
Probably not a lot, just one more bay.
And a 4-bay?
Yes.
2 bays difference?
Well, a lot of it comes down to what RAID type you're going to want to use on it. If you have a 2-bay, obviously RAID 5, RAID 6, that's out unless you have an expansion.
Sure.
But I think the sweet spot for these units really comes into 6 bays, because RAID 6 you're going to have overhead of 2 drives. So 4 or 5 bay, I mean, you're going to use a lot of your overhead for...
You eat a lot of bays for your data protection.
Yeah, so 6 bays, 8 bays, etc. really helps out, and that's where I think Synology is finally starting to pull away from their 5-bay, 8-bay configurations, go to 6-bay and 8-bay.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you have it. 1621 Plus, nice step up from the prior model that was been, almost 3 years ago at this point. Good performance, held back a little bit by the 4 onboard gig LAN ports. We would love to see something a little more here, 2.5 even, or 5. You could start to make the argument should be creeping into Synology units. Not here yet, but hopefully soon. But there is, of course, the PCIe port if you want to expand your connectivity. And like we said, DSM on board with all those features. We just did a piece on snapshot replication. A lot of these things are free in the system and bring a lot more functionality. But to Kevin's point, for a variety of RAID types. 6 bays starts to make a lot more sense for small businesses that want protection and capacity. And there's a lot here to like. So overall, we're pretty big fans, as usual, of Synology, albeit with a few shortcomings. And that's it. You got anything else?
No, it's a fun platform.
All right. Thanks for checking out the video.